Standard Oil of California decided they wanted another refinery in Southern California. So they came down here and found this area, which we now know as El Segundo. And it was a good spot for a refinery because nobody lived here. It was about 20 miles from downtown LA, so they figured the city would never expand out this far. And it had an ocean port, so they could bring crude in, and at that time, sail ships.
My grandfather's other brother came out here to the Los Angeles area and heard about Standard Oil Refinery was being built here, and checked it out. And he went to work there. He was one of the early, I think he worked in an office or something, and called my dad in Riverside and told him to come on out and get a job here. He says, they'll give you a job doing all kinds of things. And my dad went to work in the crude stills, and that was in 1917. My mother and father moved into an apartment, the only apartment that was in town. There was not very many houses. In 1917 they started building them then at that time. But then she found out that I was coming, and so they decided they'd better build a house.
I was born January the 6th, 1913. I was born in Inglewood because my father was farming in the Palos Verdes, way over on the west side. And at that time, it was horse and buggy from Palos Verdes to Inglewood. So my mother and the rest of the family were in Inglewood at the time. But then my younger childhood, I recall, was on a ranch at 118th and Aviation, where I spent the biggest part of my teenage, school age in that. The first 2 years that I attended high school was 1925 and 26, and at that time, El Segundo did not have a high school. So the buses, there were 3 buses that came to El Segundo and picked up the students. That went on for 2 years, and then I guess it was 1927 or 28 that El Segundo had their own high school. But for the first 2 years, I knew some real nice students and some real nice athletes from El Segundo High. But El Segundo was a very small town at that time. Had some real good people.
To have coupons, we had to have rationing coupons. He said even for shoes.
Yep.
I remember the margarine and gas for the car. That's the only thing I remember, but I know there was a lot of rationing going on. And when the war ended, remember what we did? We grabbed we grabbed the lids of trash cans and we're walking up and down the street banging these trash can lids like this, celebrating the end of the war. Yeah.
Well, there wasn't many people around and not really any houses to speak of. It was pretty open spaces. I thought it was really nice when we came. They had a welcome wagon, and when you came, you called in and they came out and they brought you all the information about El Segundo. And we moved into the apartments on 722 Indiana Court, and we had renters. So I would call in each time, and the renters would they would come usually from different states, and that way they'd have access to what to do and where to go, and it was very nice.
The first thing I came to El Segundo, I had moved here from a small town in Minnesota. There was a cornfield on the corner of Pine and Main, and the Herald office, little Herald office, white building, was right next to it. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm right back home. And it just seemed funny that I would choose a small town, because I thought I wanted to live in a big city because I'd always lived in a small town. However, I certainly adapted myself to El Segundo in a hurry, and I loved it, every minute of it. All the 64 years I've been here.
I worked at Hughes Aircraft for 34 years. I started working there in, say, the end of in June of 1953, I believe, or 1952. But I've always felt that people were so friendly here, and everybody cared for each other. You know, it was a community of people kind of working together. They would look after your children, and if they were away, you would look after their children. So it's always just been people help each other, it seems like. I don't think I'd ever want to live anywhere but El Segundo.